So how can I get you on that first screen with the search results to have 5 to 7 people that can truly, truly help you, right? Because right now I wrote a list. I think I tried over 30 different types of things to heal my ankles because it wasn't working.
Hello and welcome back to the Ignition Path Podcast. My fellow Igniters, welcome in. I appreciate you joining us. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe, and tell your friends if you hear something during this podcast that resonates with you, share this episode with people. Right now, we've got a guest coming in, Alenka. How do you say your last name, Alenka? Kyslik?
Kyslik, yeah.
Oh, okay. I got it right. So this is Alenka Kyslik, and she's going to tell you all about her business and her entrepreneurial path, because that's what we're about here on the Ignition Path podcast. So go ahead, Alenka, and tell us exactly, the proper way maybe to say your name. I always butcher that stuff. And then who you are, what you do, and we'll go from there.
Yeah. So hi, my name is Alenka Kyslik. The first name's phonetic. It's easy enough. The spelling is what trips people up, usually. And I have recently decided to launch a business. I've been in software creation, product management for almost 15 years of my career. And through a series of health issues, which I'm sure we'll get into, I realized that I wasn't finding the answers in conventional medicine, and I found them in other ways. And so I decided to create something that could also help other people. And so the business is called Zaha. And the concept is that we match people based on shared values. So we match providers and clients based on shared values to help them find someone that can help them where they're at today. And this is much like any sort of matchmaking system, right? If you think about booking vacation rentals or other types of things that where it's like, hey, I have a series of filters and then there's a series of, places I can be connected with. We're doing that, but we're doing it with different types of providers, healthcare providers, and this healthcare and modalities, right? So we're talking a range of things from like acupuncture, chiropractic, functional medicine to things like physical therapy, pelvic floor therapists, breathwork practitioners, coaches, et cetera. Just depend, nutritionists, dietitians, depends on what you need.
That's fantastic. Sorry, my recording software just pushed something up on my page and I've never seen it before. So I had to read, what is it telling me? I'm like, what is it telling me? So hopefully this is going good. But yeah, that's great. So what is the background that you have that even brought? I mean, you said software, but do you have any healthcare background as well, or just through the process of your health journey, this came about? So background in software, but anything in health other than your own issues?
My own issues, don't we all?
Your own lack of better terms. I often don't say the right words every time.
No, I'm good with issues.
We all have. I got issues too. We all got issues. Yeah.
Now I'm gonna have that song stuck in my head. Yeah. So, I don't have. Yeah. I don't have a background in medicine. I am a super curious person and I research a lot. That being said, I am building a medical and modality advisory board so that everything gets vetted through them. I am the person building the system. Someone else is vetting that aspect of it because I don't want to ever say I'm the expert in something I'm not. Gotcha.
You're the expert in the software and building that part of it, and then lining people up and making sure they have an answer. It's a great service. I mean, who knew that's what we need in this world? But it definitely sounds important to make sure that this is something that people can find and people can use. Is it live and running now? Like, can we post it in the description below, or is it in beta?
We're going to be running focus groups soon, and the wait list is live. So for people who are interested, they can sign up there. But no, we're in the beginning stages of it. Everything takes longer than you think it is. We were talking about renovations before we started. Software is very similar to renovations. It always takes longer.
Exactly. 100%. And this is great because that it automatically leads us to another podcast later on once everything's up and running. We're at the ground floor of you building this, and we're introducing it to the listeners here. So that's fantastic. So when it comes to your health and background and what you've gone through to get you to this point. Is that something you're willing to share with the audience? And not trying to push and prod. I know that some things are definitely very very personal, but if your story can even help one person, that would be great if you're willing to talk about it and where you came from with all that.
Yeah, I'm happy to talk about it. And every time I talk about it with somebody, something new comes to light, and I learn something about myself as well, which is always fascinating. But yeah, I went through a couple of things that I think a lot of people can relate to. So the kind of starting point was is I went through a really horrible burnout, like dysfunctional, could not feed myself, could barely get out of bed. Like I just pushed myself too hard for. It was 6 to 7 years, let's say, was like the brunt of it, but I'm sure the overachieving, people pleasing aspect of it started before then. And I wasn't really getting answers when I was speaking with therapists. There wasn't really a lot of help there. And what did help me though was the community I had around me, my family, my friends, people who, showed up and checked on me like, hey, did you eat today? Let me make you some food. Like, right. Let's get you out of the house for a walk, right? Like these, because when you're so drained that you can't even think of what you need for yourself, right? I'm sure a lot of people can relate to that.
Yeah. And paramedic life, we can commute, commit to that. So
yeah, I know 2 paramedics in my life who've taken time off because of that.
Yeah. It's a real thing. Yep.
Yeah. So that's where that started. I'm happy to go into that in more detail. But I think what really struck a chord with me, in addition to all what I said, is at one point I had such extreme pain in my mouth. And I'm the type of person who doesn't usually take painkillers. I try to not. So for me to really need something and ask for something was a big deal. What it turned out to be when I went to the dentist is I was not only grinding my teeth, I was wearing a mouth guard at night. I was grinding it during the day. So every time I would see my boss's name, every time I would get a notification, every time I would talk, I would go to see friends and talk about work. And I felt myself grinding my teeth. And my dentist said, hey, you have ground your teeth so bad that it will not get better. So now I cannot have really cold or really hot things. It hurts. It actually hurts my teeth. I've ground it down so much. So, it's one of those things I was like, I'll do what I can. I ended up getting Botox in my jaw to numb that nerve so that you can't grind, which is a temporary solution, right? Botox wears off, but it was nothing I had ever considered, but I was so desperate. I'm like, I'm not willing to ruin my teeth for the rest of my life. I'm going to suck it up and do this because I like food.
Yeah, food is good. And the first part of digestion is always great, grinding it up. And, luckily we have false teeth in the world, but yeah, you don't want to go that route. My mom, when she fell on concrete outside of her high school, when she was a teenager, she knocked out all of her teeth, top and bottom. So she had to go, they extracted everything, and she had false teeth from 18 on. Yeah.
Poor thing.
Yeah. So, and she lived a healthy life and everything, but yeah, you don't want to go down that path for sure. No, but no. So did it cause migraines and stuff too with that grinding and did it have anything to do with, so are we clear to say that the burnout was a depressive state, or did they diagnose you with something different?
My psychiatrist diagnosed me with a terrible job, and said I needed to quit. Basically,
PTSD of the IT world. It's real. No.
Yeah, no. She was like, "This is a temporary solution, or a temporary situation, and I know that once you quit, it's going to go away." And sure enough, it did. Granted, it took me a couple of years to really get my feet under me, and then, to cherry on the cake, I was in a pretty good place. I was ready to get back to myself, and I stepped off a curb and tore apart my ankle. Tore.
Had that.
And I had that. I thought, it's like when you think things are getting good, you do something, you push yourself too hard. Yeah. It's the lesson.
I've been there. I chopped up my fingers on a table saw and got the top of this one off and then got into the other 3. Luckily, the blade was only up 1/4 of an inch, and it was just a stupid mistake. I did the wrong thing and it kicked the board out and my fingers dropped onto the saw blade. And I knew exactly when it happened. I'm like, I know what I did wrong. And, but that kind of sent me into a spiral because I had to be off work. We didn't have a light duty program at the time at my job. So I wasn't able to do what I want to do, and what fulfills me is serving my community, and serving others. I'm here to serve. That's why I started the Ignition podcast, to serve the entrepreneurial side of me and other people out there that are entrepreneurs, and promote their businesses. Right. So things were going bad. Like my wife was like, "You're not acting right," but I've crashed my car during that time. Like, it was this crazy cycle, right? And so it just lays into what you were already in a state that you didn't like to be in, but you knew it, and you knew the reason, and then you step off a curb and hurt yourself. It's like, so I thank God I didn't hurt anybody in the car accident other than my car and their car, but it was just one of those things where, I'm sitting there waiting for the police officer to come, and I ended up knowing the police officer because it was in my local municipality. And I'm just like, and I told him, because I'd known him for years, I'm like, I'm at my lowest right now, man. I need help. And he's like, "What do you mean you need help?" I'm like, I feel like everything's going out of control. And so, because he's a public servant and I'm also a public servant, and he's the police and I'm the paramedic, he checked on me several times over that next couple of weeks, just to say, "Hey man, you need to go, get a beer." I'm like, "Well, no, I don't need to go get a beer, maybe a coffee," but it was one of those things where I've been there, and that's, the stigma around asking for help is so painful to do for first responders, and for people that are leaders in their industry. Like, you're a leader in the software industry, and I bet you didn't feel good to raise your hand, right? But talk a little bit about that. Like, when did it come about that you're like, "Oh, I'm at rock bottom and I need to do something about this"? And then from that, did the software and this matchmaking company come about?
Yeah. So I think there was two spots. There was one with the burnout, one with the ankle, where I just hit absolute rock bottom, because the ankle injury I'm on year 2 of healing, because I keep re-injuring, which is like a totally different, if you want to talk about hypermobility, I'm there with you. So,
Right.
that's a whole nother story. But so the first was when I had a friend visit, very, very good friend of mine, visit, and I was in the middle of that burnout. This was before I went on leave because of the burnout. And she came over, and all she did was clean up and organize my kitchen. And I melt. I was just like a puddle on the floor, because the fact that I did not have the energy to do that myself. And it's not like, there was rotting vegetables or anything. Like, it wasn't like a disastrous mess, but it was more than I was comfortable with. Right. And that it gave me a realization, and she gave me a really good pep talk, and she's still a good friend of mine today, but she's like, "No, this is terrible, and it's going to get better." And I think about what she said all the time.
Well, and that's great that you were able to hear someone's, that's going to be heartbreaking in itself. You're hearing someone get real with you, and that sends that, depending on the person, that could send you in a rage against them and never talk to them again, or it could send you in an aha moment. So it's kudos to you for kudos to her for having the strength to tell you the reality of what she's seeing, because you're not, at that time, you're not seeing the reality. You're in a whole nother state. I know, and it's just great that you guys had that relationship, and she was willing to do that for you, because that probably helped a lot more. That now looking back, but yeah. So let's go back to the software itself. So you mentioned a couple of different chiropractic and stuff like that. Breath work kind of led me to a gal that I interviewed once that does human design. Have you explored some of those alternate areas so people have options, or like how much of the different alternate medical stuff is involved with that, to introduce it to people? Because I had no clue what human design was until I was on a podcast, and my other co-host said, "Hey, we're having someone call on about human design." I'm like, well, what the hell does that mean? And then they told me, I'm like, wow, you pegged me for everything I am. And it's but the birth date and the time. So talk a little bit about that, and how what other services are inside of the software.
Yeah. So for me, I had, this was sorry.
You're okay.
This is a phone. I'm so sorry that it's my extra testing phone that just went off behind me on the ground. I didn't even realize it was there. I'm so sorry.
That's why I like about the podcast format, man. I'm just that's not going to get cut. We're just going to leave that in. I mean, it's a human. We're real people.
I have to have extra devices because I work in software, and some of them have a lot.
Oh my gosh. Oh, right.
Yeah. Gosh. Yeah. So, it was this realization I had. I was speaking with someone, and she was like, I do this for people, and it's based on this like her religious beliefs. And I was like, I think that's so beautiful that you can build something that's based on something that matches with your values. And so from the, like what you're talking about, we're going to create I'm jokingly calling it a woo-woo scale right now, but like a sliding scale right now that has like, traditional kind of healing or traditional medicine, and then like open to the universe on the other side, and you can kind of pick where you are in that scale, and then that, along with your symptoms and a bunch of other things, will match you up with the right providers, because I do think that is part of values and what we're comfortable with, right? Like you might be open to breath work or human design or whatever, but not everyone's comfortable with that. No, and I don't think it's, and what I see with a lot of what exists out there today is it's like, hey, we provide therapists, we provide functional medicine, we provide like one specific focus thing, which is great. And it's wonderful that that exists. I do think though that people often want more options. Like I have a friend of mine who's tried therapy and it doesn't work for her. Because it makes her relive her trauma and she just can't, like, it's just too much for her. But there are other types of modalities that exist that could help her work through that without having to go through those horrible things. Right. So it's just a matter of how can we create the kind of best space that helps match people in a way that makes sense for them. Like, I don't want you seeing something on there that you're like, no, I'm like, that's not my thing. Like, I'm not, that's not, I'm not interested. Right. So how can we match this in a way that is helpful, easy, and straightforward? So a piece of, advice or the kind of a standard that exists today in software is you should have 5 to 7 choices on a page maximum. So this is like in terms of buttons you click on, in terms of actions you take, et cetera. So how can I get you on that first screen with the search results to have 5 to 7 people that can truly, truly help you? Right? Because right now I wrote a list. I think I tried over 30 different types of things to heal my ankles because it wasn't working. I kept on re-injuring myself. I kept hurting myself. And the orthopedic surgeon was like, rest. I'm like, okay, but my muscles have atrophied now. Cause this is there's a point where this works and there's a point where it doesn't. So like I need to find something else. So I started doing my own research and digging into it. And I'm grateful that I have the knowledge and the skills to be able to read some of these articles and, like scientific studies, but that's not available to everyone. So how can this system create a matchmaking that connects people that, hey, like I have, like, for example, if you're going through something that's really tough with your kid, you probably want a therapist that has kids and specializes in that type of thing, right? You don't want somebody who's, like you need to have people who you can relate to and that share the same values. If you're like, hey, I am miserable, I just need a break, let's give you somebody who can provide you relief. If you're like, hey, I need someone that keeps me accountable to like get whatever it is that you need to get done, let's get you someone that can do that, right? So there's a variety of systems that I can talk about this for ages that basically makes you to make this efficient. This is what I'm good at. I'm not good at, like you said, the modality and the medical part, but I can do this piece of it.
Yeah, and line people up and whatever they choose. It's almost like you said, it's just the way it works. So this is an app, or is it like a website that you go to like what's the technical side of how this will work?
Yeah. So something that I tell people that I don't think a lot of people know is when you have an app on the App Store or the Google Store, they take 30% of your revenue off the bat. Which I'm not okay with from these practitioners that are losing 30% of their charged rate. Like, that's not okay with me, So we're launching a website because the
website it is
a lot more fair.
Well, the thing is, it's a website that people can get to from Chrome or, Safari on their phone. Yeah.
You make it super easy to use, and it's like, it's effectively very similar. Apps have a lot of benefits, and I can talk about the pros and cons of app versus website. But the biggest con for me is that 30%. And then it will cost you like 3-4 times the amount in terms of development to build an app over just building a website.
Yeah. Yeah. I didn't think about that. Yeah. Cause that's a whole nother ball game. So, okay. When it comes to, so when you're talking about the different modalities, this is where I believe that the Ignition Path podcast and then my other podcast, Elevate, which is for first responder health, mental health and resilience. There's a little bit of a crossover here now, because what you're describing of some of the modalities out there to help people, especially in the mental health space. Let's just talk about mental health for a second, let alone because it is health. I mean, mental health is health, and we all need to know that. And if you don't think it is, then go listen to the Elevate podcast with a lot of my guests, and you'll quickly realize that mental health is a huge factor in our healthcare right now, let alone physical stuff. But a couple of the guests that I had on the Elevate podcast would be right up the alley of a different modality, like Maury Zelkovich, for example. He is a brainwave entrainment specialist, and he uses the frequencies with headphones on to listen to sounds and music that he's produced that stopped his mental health crisis on a dime. And other things like my latest guest, who is Dr. Lipoff, he's out of Chicago, and he does a ganglion injection to numb up the nerve that's back behind us here, that instantly, within a 10-minute treatment, it stops somebody with suicidal ideations. So there is a lot of things that this podcast and are getting to know each other, and our future, discussions, and you're in my network now, and you're in my ecosystem, and we've talked about some other things we're definitely going to be retouching base on when you're getting to another level of your own podcasting, right? Because I think that's going to be a great way for you to spread the word of everything and have guests on yourself that would show and introduce them to the people that are going to be in this webpage, not app. So, there's definitely some things that I'm going to be able to kick over to you, people that I know, people that I've already had on my podcast, my detoxification, Dan Root. That's another huge thing about detoxification and what that can do with sauna and niacin. It's just a lot of really cool stuff. And I think this is that crossroads where Ignition Path and your entrepreneurial path is now bleeding into things that I've already, found and people that I've already introduced to the world that I'll introduce to you at a later date, and get all those people's information to you so you can reach out to them. But yeah, anything else? Like, go ahead and tell us how, like right now, talk to us a little bit more about your waiting list and how that operates. And if people are interested in wanting to use this app eventually, like what is the process at this time?
Yeah. Actually, from a business perspective, you brought up waiting lists, and something that I've learned recently that I think is fascinating is why waiting lists are so important. So, because this is an entrepreneurial podcast, I'm gonna get a little insight into all of the research I've been doing, and then we'll get into how you can contact me. But waiting lists are important for two reasons. So, one of them is that people, algorithms change, things change. And so you are effectively using someone else's platform for social media that you don't control. And so if they decide to change something up, you could lose out on that audience you have. So a waiting list is something that you own, that you can use, or an email list, right? And that's why investors find email lists really important. And the higher subscription rate you have on that email list, the more dedicated interest they gauge and the more comfortable they are with investment. So it's just like an interesting thing that I've been learning and putting pieces together. So in terms of the waiting list, it's sahacollective.com. And then you can find me on Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube, saha.collective. So that's SAHA. And yeah, we're going to be talking a lot about the business, the modalities, bringing people on. And something I tend to forget because it is really important, but it's just not something people think about, is one of the key pieces of Saha is we are creating a fund that will be available for people who otherwise would not be able to afford the services, because I don't think...
Yeah, that's great. Yeah. So it's like you've got a nonprofit built into it.
Yes, exactly.
So help them out.
To help people out. So we're going to take a portion of the fees that, our proceeds, and we're going to put it towards this fund. And then that means that the people who are serving also get paid, because they want to help people, and they want to help everyone usually. And it's not, they can't do it without getting paid, at some level, because they have families and lives and, they
Right.
need to eat. So
Yeah, that's good. Yeah.
it's healthy
Have to have
things, right?
nutrition. You know that when you didn't eat for how many ever months.
Yeah, not well. Yeah, so that's like a really core part of the business, and it's going to be going live
Yeah.
as soon as we go live.
Fantastic. When it comes to, so the word Saha, what does that stand for? I don't think we covered that, or did we? I don't think we did.
I don't think we did. So Saha is, well, first of all, it's easy to spell and pronounce, which was really important from a business perspective.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah, but it translates to together or endure. And what I have found is that we endure through hard things together. We don't do it on our own.
Yeah, absolutely. That's community. There is strength in the community, and that's what I'm finding with all kinds of my podcasting endeavors, with everything. I'm finding the strength in the community. So, but yeah, well, thanks so much for coming on. Don't forget that everything that she mentioned will be in the notes down below. Her website, how to be on the wait list. I'm very excited to see this path and how this grows. You and I are going to be in contact for sure several different times for other reasons as well as this. I want to get you in contact with some of the people that I've had on my other podcasts as well already, just so you know that there's different things out there. And from that, I just want to thank you for coming on, Alenka, and we appreciate your time and your insight. And don't forget to subscribe, like, share, all that good stuff. If something resonated with you on this podcast, don't hesitate to share it with your friends so we can get her information into their ears and help people, because that's ultimately what I am put on this earth to do, is to help people by being a paramedic. And now when it comes to the entrepreneurial space, I want to help my fellow entrepreneur grow their path and be a part of their path. And I think that Alenka and I have definitely established that. We've had a couple of other offline conversations that she knows what I'm doing and the great things that I'm planning on doing for my retirement with this podcast platform, and knowing more about what she's doing. It's amazing. I appreciate it, Alenka. So thanks again for coming on. And any last words or?
No, I'm just really, to what you said, I think it's like, you're here to help people. And like, if I'm one of those people, I'm finding I am here to help people. And that is what I find the most fulfilling, is to help other people. That's why I'm doing what I'm doing.
Awesome. All right. Well, thanks so much, everybody. Take care. And thanks for tuning in. We appreciate you coming on the Ignition Path podcast. Take care, everyone.
Thank you for listening to Ignition Path, fueling the entrepreneurial fire.